Hello dear students, today we learn the chapter Drug Discovery and Clinical Evaluation of New Drug, which includes following contents: Introduction, Drug Discovery, Need of Drug Discovery Pipeline, what is clinical trial and its needs, phases of clinical trials, conclusion, and last one is the references. Drug discovery in the field of medicine, biotechnology, and pharmacology. Drug discovery is the process by which new candidate medications are discovered. The process of drug discovery involves the identification of candidates, synthesis, characterization, screening, and assay of therapeutic efficacy. Identification of new chemical entity with particular biological activity is the goal of drug discovery. Need of drug discovery to fulfill medical needs, downstream health cost of therapy, cost of individual or country, sustain industrial activity. Next one is the drug discovery pipeline. Drug discovery pipeline involves around 8 step. It's a multi-step interdisciplinary process which involves target identification, lead discovery, medicinal chemistry, in vitro studies, in vivo studies, preclinical toxicological testing, and IND applications, clinical trials, FDA approval, and commercialization. First of all, we will discuss the target identifications. It's the initial phase of drug discovery pipeline, the identification of specific target which drive the progression of diseases will helpful for design and drug development. The target can be genes, epigenetic proteins, RNA, or anything involved in disease pathogenesis. Next one is the lead discovery. The chemical compound designed to interact with or block specified targets are synthesized and isolated. This step involves combinatorial chemistry, assay development to screen selected compounds, and next one is the medicinal chemistry. It involves developing a library of the compound and their analogs towards the target and conducting the SAR, that is structure activity relationship, which interrogate how 3D conformation of chemical structure is interact with biological targets, and in this test we also do the silico screening. Next one is the in vitro studies. In vitro study investigate the drug affinity toward its target and selectivity. Next one is the in vivo studies. It is also called as the preclinical study. Once the lead compound have been optimized and characterized to an acceptable level, in vivo studies are undertaken. This involves animal models of the diseases. Some animals are used in this test like mice and rats. It is used to know how the compound works in the system's biology model rather than 2D cell culture. It is also important step to know drug metabolism, clearance, immunoresponse, ability to get into the systemic circulations and to reach to the targeted sites. Next one is the preclinical toxicological studies and INT application. Preclinical toxicological testing analyzes the bioactivity, safety, and efficacy of formulated drug product. During the preclinical stages, the development process plans for clinical trials and investigative new drugs applications are also prepared. These studies these steps involves preclinical toxicological steps like acute toxicity studies, repeated dose studies, genetic toxicity studies, reproductive toxicity studies, carcinogenicity studies, and last one is the toxicokinetic studies. First of all, we will discuss the acute studies. Acute studies look at the effect of one or more doses administered over the period up to the 24 hours. The goal is to determine toxic level and observe clinical identifications of toxicity. It is helpful to determine the dose for the repeated dose studies in animals and phase 4 studies in humans. Next one is the repeated dose studies. These studies is depend upon the duration of the studies. Repeated dose studies may be referred as acute, subacute, and chronic conditions or the chronic studies. Next one is the genetic toxicity studies. These studies assess the likelihood of the drug compounds is mutagenic or carcinogenic. These genetic toxicity studies can be done by using the tests like EMS test and mouse micronucleus test. Next one is the reproductive toxicity studies. These are carried out in three segments: segment first, segment second, and segment third. In the segments first, we have studies to look the effect of the drug on fertility. Segment second and segment third studies dictate the effect on embryonic and postnatal development. Next one is the carcinogenic studies. Carcinogenic studies are the studies needed only for the drug intended for chronic and recurring conditions. They are time consuming, expensive, must be planned for the early into the preclinical testing processes. Next one is the toxicokinetic studies. They are typically similar to design to the pharmacokinetic or ADME studies, except that they use much higher dose level. They examine the effect of toxic dose of the drugs and help to estimate the clinical margin of the safety. This test involves numerous ICH as well as FDA guidelines. Next one is the clinical trials. What is clinical trials? Clinical trials are the research investigation which in which people volunteers to test new treatment, intravenous or the test as means to prevent, detect, treat or manage various diseases or the medication. WHO, that is the World Health Organization, defines the clinical trials as any research studies that prospectively assign humans participants or group or humans to one or more health related interventions to evaluate the effect on health outcomes. Next is the need of clinical trials. The pharmacological properties of the drug in humans to determine the toxicological properties of the drug in humans, appropriate route and frequency of administration of the drug in humans. Clinical trials are very important. After that, phases of clinical trials. Before going for the phases of clinical trials, we have to do the preclinical trial studies. Preclinical trial studies requires around 3 to 4 years for that studies, and these studies are carried out into the laboratory and it is carried out on animals. These studies are carried out to assess the safety and biological activity of the drugs. After that, collecting the preclinical data, we have to file to the IND, that is the investigative new drugs at FDA, and after that we go for the phase trials. In phase first, we take around 20 to 80 healthy volunteers, and the purpose of this study is to determine the safety and dosage of the drugs. After that, we go for the phase second. It involves around 100 to 300 patient volunteers, and the aim of that phase second trials is to evaluate effectiveness, look for the side effects. After that studies, we go for the phase third trials. In the third trials, we have we use around 1000 to 3000 patients, human volunteers. The purpose of this test to verify effectiveness, monitor adverse reactions from the long term use. After these phase 3 trials, we have filed NDA, that is the new drug application at FDA, and after the overview, we go for the phase 4. Phase 4 is also called as the post-marketing surveillance phase. In this, the drug is given to the various persons, and it is also called as the pharmacological testings. It is done ongoing technical supports after the uh, post approval, and these studies may be required by regulatory authorities or may be undertaken by sponsoring the companies for competitive purpose or other reasons. Post marketing surveillance is very important to check the stability of the drugs, to check the effectiveness of the drugs. Safety of the data is also collected by using the drugs to the multiple persons. So it is also called as the exploratory trials. After that, FDA approval and commercialization. Once the compound is recommended for the reviews, passes the review and FDA approval, it can be then used clinically by physicians nationwide worldwide. The compounds or the drugs then commercially available for purchase and successfully in clinic to improve the patient lives and outcomes. Conclusion of presentation is that ultimate goal of these studies is to bring a new compound with the proven therapeutic effect to the market. Disease causing organisms are more powerful than the therapy, so it is difficult to treat the diseases. People suffer from many new diseases. For curing, for treating and diagnosis of the diseases, clinical trials and development of new drug is very important. Clinical trials and drug development provide the information about mechanism of identification, drug, drug repositioning, identification, therapeutic target, drug efficacy, prediction, and combination therapy. These are the references. Thank you so much.